Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining today. My name is Karen Peterman, and my colleague Allison Blackmeyer and I were ARIS Fellows in 2021. This video series is part of our work and part of our project. Today, I'm joined by Nathalie Wolfram, who was also a 2021 ARIS Fellow. Nathalie is the director of the Broader Impacts Group at the University of Montana, where she tracks her work using both Excel databases and a dashboard system that was created by the university's data office. So Nathalie, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, so let's just get things started with kind of a big picture question. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of data you track and a little bit more about the Excel work and the dashboard work that you're playing around with to try to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. So as a brief bit of context, the dashboard that I created with colleagues both in the data office and other programs and departments at my university that serve K-12 audiences emerged from an informal working group that got together and started talking about what if we shared our data better? Because we all have Excel spreadsheets that live on our hard drives or on our corner of the cloud, and we're not really talking to each other. We're not collecting data in a standard way. And if we did share data in some systematic way, would we collaborate better? Would we be able to better align with our university admissions office? And would we better be able to do some longitudinal tracking of the students who come through our programs, and where do they end up, and what do their educational outcomes look like? So that was the impetus for the product which we created.
I also appreciate that this was created through partnership across, so there is the working group, but there's also the data office that's doing the Tableau build on that side. And then other departments on campus are seeing it and recognizing these opportunities for partnership. And so I appreciate this as an example of how to leverage data to strengthen relationships in lots of different ways across the university. As a data geek, that makes my heart sing. So
yes,
I think it's an excellent example of that too.
And I will say, had we not found a really good partner in our data office at our university, this wouldn't have happened. Certainly you can watch YouTube videos on how to use Tableau, and we could have hired an intern. It would have been absolutely possible, but given our particular resources and time and interests, I don't think it would have come to fruition. And because we were working with our institutional data office, it meant that our project was kind of, even though it remains ours, it's also sucked into this larger institutional ongoing strategic planning process. And that's been really valuable and sparked some new conversations that have helped break down silos.
Yeah.
So this is the University of Montana's K-12 engagement dashboard. It is created in Tableau, which is software that anyone can purchase a license for. The University of Montana has an institutional license, which I'm a beneficiary of, but individual users can also purchase it. And I believe that it's either discounted or free for educational use. So that may be something to explore, but the dashboard is built in Tableau and then it's published to the University of Montana website.
Nathalie, I just wanted to jump in and ask, so just to clarify, this system, because it lives on the university's website, anybody can access it. So part of the design of this was to think about, all right, what would not just the university community want and need from this dashboard as a starting point, but also what would the communities that are represented in these different counties want and need if they're looking for something in their area, or if they're looking for something that happens to be in another part of the state. Is that right?
Absolutely. So this is a publicly available dashboard. I will say anecdotally that it seems to be serving people within the university community so far, which doesn't surprise me. Because it is publicly available, we're certainly very aware of what data we're putting out there. So there's no for this particular dashboard, we're not collecting any unique student information. But yes, this would be one way to, or a tool for having a conversation with somebody in Blaine County who's wondering, where's the University of Montana? What are they doing in my county? And this would be something to share and say, here's a snapshot of, and then to continue that conversation and say, what are we not doing? What would you like to see? And that is a hope that it would be a tool that the public would also access and use.
Okay.
And what the dashboard does, we can zoom out here. So you'll see we're looking at the state of Montana at the county level, and we're looking at where audiences, K-12 audiences served by programs reside. So this might mean where the university is going, or where students who come to the University of Montana for, let's say, summer camps or field trips, where those students reside. So we look at a total number of participants. I will say one decision that we made early on is we're really not too interested in bean counting for its own sake. And we don't make a great deal out of this number because we recognize how inherently slippery it is. In this case, we're talking about non-unique users. So if somebody comes to a museum 3 days a week, all year round, they're going to be counted as one participant every time. And we're okay with that. And we're not shouting, bragging off the rooftops about this number because of that. We recognize that some programs are collecting individual student data, and some are clicking door entries. And so we wanted to accommodate both. We have the number of programs at the University of Montana that currently report into this dashboard. An event is defined as a summer camp, a field trip, something that happens in a moment in time, whether that's over 1 week or 1 day. So it is a row on our spreadsheet, which you'll see. And then you can see the cities and counties that we've been to. A use of this dashboard or a function of it, so you can click into a county and see what's going on in Flathead County particularly, and you'll pull up a list that shows, okay, the Flathead Lake Biological Station, they brought this careers in lake ecology to Kalispell in May of 2019, and they had 40 participants. So it's a quick snapshot. If I, as a member of the public or some stakeholder at the university, wanted to know more about that program, I wouldn't learn about it on this dashboard. I would contact Flathead Lake Biological Station. So this is really intended as a starting point. And then you can see the other program, Spectrum Discovery Area, our Hands-on Science Center was up there, and a number of other university programs. So you can drill down at the county level. You can also use drop-down menus to the right here to make some other selections. So you can see, okay, so which university program was it? And you'll already see some data cleaning issues that we're continuously working on. I'm a much savvier data cleaner than I was 2 years ago when we started this, but I still need to catch a few of these errors. We have an acronym, ASO, which stands for Autonomous Aerial Systems Office. So I need to get back in and make that consistent, the non-acronym version. We have that with Spectrum and Spectrum Discovery Area. And it's a game of whack-a-mole. I already did this and I thought I'd found them all, and then they pop up again. So it is one of the challenges that this is not fully automated. There are humans, me, people in the data office who are troubleshooting every time we do data entry, which is 3 times a year. We can look at, we can drop down and select whether these programs, the full question, and I can share this on the spreadsheet that we use to collect data, but it asks whether The event was aimed at serving populations underrepresented in higher education, which is a squishy question, but we also felt was a useful blunt instrument so that if I, as somebody at my university who's involved in writing a lot of grant proposals that are collaborative across campus, I could use this dashboard to see who's doing what, where, and then ask more questions. I'm not going to find out which underrepresented groups or how, but I'll get a broad picture. And then of course we can select by city and county. And in Montana, we have 7 federally recognized Indian reservations. One of them is not Rosebud, so that's an issue. It's a town on a reservation that somehow slipped in there. So I could see, if I deselect this, I can see where has UM been on the Blackfeet reservation. This is it's a useful tool, and it's already it's also a mapping issue, a data visualization issue. Until we get somebody with some GIS know-how to get into Tableau and write some code. What this map generates for us is the county, Glacier County, where a large portion of the Blackfeet Reservation is. The Blackfeet Reservation is also on in Pend Oreille County, but as it happens, we don't have any events that pop up in that county. So this is actually pretty problematic because we're not adequately representing the 7 sovereign tribal nations in our state. We are, if you then click on the county level, you'll see what we're doing in Glacier County, but we're still just working on how we represent that in a way that's factually correct and culturally appropriate.
You mentioned that the K-12 focus is aligned to the vast majority of public outreach that happens through the University of Montana, and that's why that's the particular sector of outreach or publics that you're focusing on. Is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
That is correct, and maybe what you're getting at is this dashboard does not reflect public engagement for general non-youth audiences. And that is for a variety of reasons. One was simply this evolved out of need that a number of different stakeholders had identified that there are these groups on campus that are primarily serving K-12 audiences and that really want to better collaborate and support one another, not to the exclusion of other public engagement, but it was simply where the need was most acutely felt. And also as a public 4-year university that is facing many of the demographic challenges that other universities of all kinds are facing, our programs are really interested in how can we, among our many other functions, support the student recruitment efforts of the university, and that was part of the impetus. But there are adults. So if we look at, I can jump to maybe a segue to looking at the data collection spreadsheet in Excel, where we look at the audience types. And I can jump back to the beginning, but one of our drop down, we worked out, these are the selections. We do have a general adult category that is defined by relationship to a K-12 student, so educator, parent, other, as well as K-12 teachers. So we do have adults represented here, but in terms of K-12 audiences that they are connected to.
Yeah. And I particularly I think one of the most daunting things about a database like this or a system like this is that it feels like such a big thing to start, right? And so you've got to start somewhere. And I love the fact that this started with a working group with a known need that you were trying to solve as a university community, and that it provides a lovely template for all other kinds of public engagement. So if you wanted to expand beyond this one day, then you've already got the template for it. You've got everything you need. It's just thinking about, okay, how are we going to take one step to the left or one step to the right to bring in a different kind of engagement to what you've already got. So that, I think that's lovely.
That's great to hear. And actually, yes, I mean, one of the more gratifying experiences I've had in hearing responses to the dashboard is other programs at our university have gotten in touch and said, hey, how did you make that? We have an economic development focused group on campus, and they're exploring, could they do something similar with their workforce development programming, which reaches across the state. So I certainly think it's a, if not a replicable model, an emulatable model for other types of programs. And along those lines as well, like the fact that it came about organically means a couple things. I know that data, anything involving data requires having perfectionists on board. And I try to be a perfectionist where I can, because I understand and I've seen what goes wrong when you have inconsistencies in the data. But also I think this experience has made me very tolerant of imperfections and being able to accept them where they are and ask, like, yes, we could fix this. We could find the root of this niggling little bug, but at what cost? Because this, this data collection spreadsheet has evolved as we've encountered some problems or people have given really useful feedback. And that means that the data haven't looked exactly the same with every 3-month installment. And to an extent, I'm okay with that. And that feels like a necessary survival skill. And when we look at the future of where will this go we were creating this, envisioning it as something, with all the effort that went into the startup, we'd like it to be permanent or somewhat permanent, but it's also been exciting to ask questions about, well, should it be exactly the way it is in the future, as and I'm talking about sort of K-12 serving programs and departments, are building a much stronger relationship with our university's admissions program, which has their own data collection system. And they're more, based on this work, they're more excited about finding out more about, okay, well, who are the unique individual students you're serving? What are their teachers' names? How can we be making sure that we're thanking students when they come to campus and making them feel, they and their families feel welcome? That's been a really exciting development. And it's also raised some questions about, our goal is not to be asking people to report data in 5 different ways at 12 different times of the year. So can we start to streamline some of these efforts? And maybe this dashboard eventually starts to merge with some of the data collection that admissions does. So I'm really proud of the product, but it's been really important to recognize it's not a fossil, and it can change, and that's okay, and that might be more productive for the institution.
Let's kind of peek under the hood in a couple of different ways. So I'm interested in what you think the most important types of data that you're currently collecting are, and why those seem to be the most important, at least at the moment. And then I'm interested in you expanding on that a little bit and showing us what it's like to even get those data into the system.
Yep. So I can jump back into our the Excel sheet that we use, and I filled in 2 italicized examples. But so far, if each column is a data type, each of these columns are our working group, and then with the data office, we spent a lot of time wringing our hands, asking those questions like, what are we trying to collect and what can we let go of? And so we decided that very broadly, we want to understand who we're serving in terms of their place of residence. We want to know what type of programming they're accessing. Is it field trips? Are we going out to K-12 schools in that community, for example? And we want to understand we want to have a record of when this happened, so we can look this up historically. So we, whenever possible, have tried to use drop-down menus for that consistency. And we landed on, okay, these are the types of engagement. If we have to really boil things down and oversimplify, which we did because we can't have 20 choices, students are coming to our university as field trip groups, or when I say our university, that could be our field station up on Flathead Lake, but they're getting on a bus, they're coming to us. They're coming to a summer camp, whether it's residential or day camp. We have a number of museums that are based at our campus, so they're coming through the door, paying admission or going to a free museum exhibit. Or we at the university are going out to K-12 schools. Used to be mostly in person, then it was all virtual, now it's both. And then there's the unsatisfying other. And we know that there are other things that happen, and we decided it's the more we split hairs, the more confusing it gets and the muddier our data will be. We have some free form fields. So this is a brief narrative description of what the program was. And I'm sorry, I didn't scroll all the way over. Sorry, we start with the program name. That's really crucial. Which university program? This is Spectrum Discovery Area, our hands-on science center. And they have what they describe as an anatomy lab field trip. So we find out when was the program. If it ran for multiple days, they could put in an end date. How many students? Of course, we actually created this during COVID, so we were hyper aware of the need to represent remote engagement. To skip over one column, so I really try to emphasize this for users, people who are reporting data, because it's not always self-evident. Where do the participants reside? So we don't need a map that shows Missoula as a hotspot, because we know groups are coming in. It's not that helpful to have a map that just says a lot of stuff happens here where our campus is. We want to know where those students are from. And so we ask their state, county, and city, and then whether those students reside on one of our state's Indian reservations. So for this reason, we do ask if it's in person, was it at UM? So we could go back and figure out, like, did they come here? Did we go there?
Yep. Let me ask a quick question related in particular to this area with the gray bar across the top, because that takes a little bit of extra poking and prodding, I think, to find out the answers to those. If you're at Spectrum and you're hosting a field trip group, do you know, like, could there be multiple counties, cities represented, and some reservations, some not? And how do people come by that information? Is it already part of a registration system so that it's also on hand, or are there other ways that people get their hands on that information so that when it's time to enter the data, they've got it?
Yeah, that's a great question with a sticky answer. So a couple things can happen. With field trips, that's one really good example. We usually know where those students are coming from, and they're usually coming from one community. So there's usually some clarity there that, these students came from Dixon, Montana, Sanders County, it's on the Flathead Reservation. We know that because the teacher at their school booked the trip. That's really straightforward. What gets fuzzier is when, so the Flathead Lake Biological Station, they do a ton of really awesome programming, and they go out all over the place. And one of the events they do is there's a lake honoring that the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes hold every spring. And people attend that event where the biological station is set up with activities and STEM role models. And they're coming from primarily communities all around the Flathead Reservation, but it's a general admission type event. We don't know exactly where they're from. So that's one of those places where we've had to kind of sigh and say, you know what, that event takes place in Polson. So that's what we're going to put as the location.
Yep.
And we're going to accept that limitation. In the event that so another example is, let's say I have a summer camp running on campus. And in one case, we had the camp population included about 10 students who came from the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, and another 10 or so students who came from the Navajo Nation in Arizona. What I would do in that case, again, it's a little messy, but I would enter 2 separate events, one row reflecting one group of students where they live and the other. So if it's known, you can break out students if it's a manageable number of locations. So yeah, it gets, and then with general admission, a museum has open hours. We put the location where the museum is, and we know people come from out of state. We're not collecting that information, and that's okay.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. This is a definition sheet that's hyperlinked. So if somebody's in our Excel template, hyperlinks to these instructions and definitions. And so I recommend when somebody's reporting data for the first time that they have this open as they fill out the spreadsheet, because it tries to clarify a number of the ambiguities people might encounter. So defining what these engagement types are. Like a common one that we encountered is a K-12 classroom visit means somebody from the University of Montana goes to a K-12 classroom virtually or in person. A field trip typically comes to campus. So those were the types of distinctions that we wanted to be crystal clear about. And then the other area where it was helpful to really hash out some definitions is that question about, are you serving underrepresented groups in higher ed? And having some specific examples like STEM programming for girls, visiting a Title I school, offering free or reduced programming. Those help, ideally help users kind of sort out where their experience fits. I should point out another limitation that we've had to accept is, so if you notice this primary audience type, it's select one. I know that in Excel, we could have a multiple drop-down option, and we did originally, because of course, groups do family science nights that reach pre-birth through 100. The problem is, in terms of data visualization, it got really, really messy, and it became really hard, or at least in Tableau, impossible to say, okay, I just want to see all the events that serve middle school audiences. And so we decided, okay, we're going to have to just ask people to select the best, what's their best attempt at the primary audience, and live with that.
Yep.
It's a little unfortunate though, because intergenerational learning is really important.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple of times that data entry happens like a few times a year, and it's not just you doing it, is the sense that I'm getting. So can you talk to me about what that process looks like, and how many people are actively entering data when the time comes, and why 3 times a year is the right balance for you all right now?
Yeah, so 3 times a year, we started thinking, okay, quarterly. That seems like, we all, these different programs and departments collect data in our different ways. And so we know there's going to be a certain amount of reformatting to report to this dashboard. And that's okay. But we thought, okay, monthly is too much. Quarterly feels reasonable. And then it just kind of clicked that it just makes sense to do it at the end of the fall semester, spring semester, summer term.
Yep.
So that's worked pretty smoothly. And as far as what the process looks like and who handles the data. So once a year, so in the fall, when everyone's presumably rested, I send out a campus-wide email to chairs, program heads, directors, really assuming no prior knowledge, saying, hey, this dashboard exists. Here's why we do it. Here are some of the benefits that some of our partners who use it have found. If you would like to report your K-12 data, here's the template with instructions, and I'm happy to meet with you. if you'd like to know more or have questions. So that's kind of the broad campus-wide outreach. And then from that broad contact, there's a growing pool of people who are kind of in the system, active participants. And that's the group that the other 2 times a year I email out to. So I'm not blasting all of campus 3 times a year. And then I hear, it's word of mouth, people find out about it or they email me and I add them to that list. Yep. So each of those, 3 times a year, I send out hey, it's time. And here's the template. And people email it back to me. So some of this is really old fashioned. They put it in Excel and they email it to me. And then I save it in Box, which is our cloud storage at the university. And then after that deadline, I combine all the data from all the programs and I manually comb through and I check for things that, it's getting easier and easier as we refine our template to standardize everything, but checking that counties are spelled correctly, because right now we don't have a drop-down menu of counties, because I keep referring to Montana, but people can report from outside the state and they do. And we don't, I know if this were a sophisticated website, we could have choose your state and then it selects the county list. We're not there yet. So checking for spelling, checking for things like making sure that the program name is not abbreviated in any way and that it's consistent. And then when I'm satisfied with that, I send that combined spreadsheet to our contact in the data office, who's checking it over herself, entering it into Tableau. She'll come back to me with a few questions about, hey, this is getting a weird null error. How do we fix this? And then she publishes it to the website. So that's getting smoother and smoother with every 3-month installation. But yeah.
So of everything you just showed us, what would you say are the data that you find yourself using most often, and how and why is that like your greatest hit right now?
So in my own role at the University of Montana, I direct the broader impacts group. So I'm really focused on building a community of practice around broader impacts, as well as, sort of a sub niche that I'm involved with is K-12 engagement. And so a lot of what I'm using this dashboard for in a meta way is a relationship builder. So I've learned of the 15, it's actually getting to be more like 18 or 19. We're awaiting a new update. Programs and departments reporting data. I would say before this dashboard came into being, I had pretty close working relationships with maybe 4, maybe 5 of them. And some of the others I was familiar with, and some I had no idea that the School of Journalism here has a really awesome journalism day that they do in non-COVID times out in Eastern Montana. I mean, so for me, it's been a way to learn what's happening and then create new connections. So just recently, for instance, inviting a group of programs to get together with admissions and talk about what's working and what's not in our working relationship, and how can we better support one another, and knowing who to really reach out to invite to those sessions. So that's a very tangible way that it's supported my work.
And it seems like that's based on the whole system, right? It's not a specific data point in the system. It's the fact that you have undertaken this overall initiative.
Yes, I'd say as far as using the actual data, and again, I'm speaking from my experience, I've been involved in a few grant proposals particularly in the last year, that really, was where in the proposal we were able to use the dashboard as a representation of how statewide our focus is as an institution, but also because I personally learned about the extent of our university's planetarium and how they were particularly good in this case at reaching high school and junior seniors and connecting them with undergraduate educators, we were able to collaborate on a proposal that the planetarium might have done on its own, but it was definitely richer from involving multiple partners. So anecdotally, and I know this is leading to, we're ripe for a good evaluation process. But I have been hearing from programs that, yeah, this is great to know. I didn't know that they do that. And we're having more conversations.
Yeah. Okay. When you think about where you started with that working group and where you are now, where you're actively using this system to build relationships, to help create grant proposals, what do you think, what are the most important things that you all have learned along the way and kind of creating this and starting to use it?
I'd say one lesson that's been really important all along and continues to be is to keep the design process very open and inclusive. That if I had cooked this up in my office alone, that the dashboard would not be capturing the diversity of activities that are happening, and that it was incredibly valuable to involve people who collect data in different ways that I was not as familiar with. And so, and even now, even though, it's built, but it is in many ways still fluid. And so checking in with people as they report data and hearing like what was confusing for them and trying to continue to sort of build to that feedback has been really valuable. And then I may have touched on this earlier, but really kind of embracing the uncertainty of what will this look like in 1, 3, 5, and 10 years. And as we see opportunities to maybe let this evolve as it becomes in ways that become more useful to us as K-12 serving programs and to the institution. I might be meandering a bit, but one really exciting application that has also come from this that is very tangible is our admissions director was looking over the dashboard and said, for me, this is really useful because I didn't know that there was this annual event happening out in Yellowstone County, and it's serving 100 students a year, and we need to have an admissions rep there. So, which was great to hear, and also is all the more reason, I think, to be thinking about how can we be dovetailing our data collecting and sharing efforts with other stakeholders on campus who are doing similar work.
Nathalie, thank you so much for the tour and for the story behind the tour that got you all to where you are today. I think there's a lot for people to think about and build from in the work that you all are doing. If you have questions for Nathalie that didn't get answered today, if you have questions for Allison or for me, you'll see our contact information at the end of this presentation. Please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you.